welcome everyone. So today we are here to talk to you about managing a decentralized intranet. So Pete, do you want to skip and I'll just talk a little bit about our host today? So you've got myself and Coco Molina. So Coco is actually on the West Coast. I think she is going to join the call. So it's 6 a.m. for her. I am based in the UK. You can hear from my accent, but actually I cover North America with Coco. So we're your North American colleagues, and then Nicole and Pete, they cover Europe, including UK as well, so large areas. But Pete and myself were actually SWOOP customers before joining SWOOP. So we have been where you are. I was a channels manager for 20 odd years. Pete's worked in internal comms, looking after channels and intranet. So this is a topic we're very passionate about, and we're going to be sharing some of our knowledge with you all today. SWOOP Academy. So this is part of the SWOOP Academy. These are the masterclasses. So this is just us helping you, as Pete said, very informal, getting together, peers, networking, and just talk about challenges, where we can help, experiences and things like that. We do expert talks. So that's where we invite somebody to come along to one of our classes, and they will give their view on topics. We have tons of blog articles, tons of videos, so definitely take a look at our website. Treasure trove of material, but there's some stuff there that can really help you on your journey for internal comms, digital workplace, channel management. So today we're going to be looking at how to successfully manage a decentralized intranet. I know most people today have decentralized intranets, and we get it. You know, not everyone is set up to create content for intranets. So we're going to share some of our findings from the latest SharePoint benchmarking report. So these findings will hopefully really help inform the way that you train your intranet editors and publishers. Pete's going to be sharing some real world case studies that we heard from SharePoint Festival. And then we're just going to show you some slides on understanding the SWOOP analytics, the health scores, and how it can actually support your intranet and editors with engagement. So lovely to meet you all. Thank you for joining. So as we kick off, it is being recorded, so they will make these available to you. So what is an intranet? So we have so intranets, for probably most of you, are your primary communication channels. Please let us know in chat, you know, just let us know how you use your intranet. But actually, why do intranets matter? So overall, intranet management is crucial for optimizing internal communications. They help foster collaboration, they facilitate knowledge sharing, and they help things with improve employee engagement, ensuring data security, and enhancing organizational efficiency. So really, at its core, intranets are there to help your colleagues. What I used to say is everything that used to be on an intranet is there to help and inform colleagues to do their sort of their role, their day-to-day job. So effective communication, so it serves as that central hub for your internal communication within the organisation. It allows people to stay up to date with important information, company news and updates. The knowledge sharing and collaboration piece. Now, depending on how you have channels, some of you might be using Teams and things like that. But actually, for some of you that aren't utilising social networks or anything like that, you will be looking at you know, using your intranet solely for that. So access to information. So again, it's really important that everywhere, this will become the sort of the first point of call for when people need accesses to policies, processes, instructions, booking holidays, things like that. So it'll be their way in. So it's really important that you are setting up your colleagues for success when it comes to your intranet. Employee engagement, you know, that's a given with your intranet. It's about having those news articles, those human-led interest stories we know work really well. And obviously the security and data privacy. Intranets, most of them are very secure, so you can put that really private information that you can't probably put on a social network. So it's really important to make sure that the information that is going on your SharePoint or your intranet site is secure. And then obviously streamline workflows. So it just helps minimize that, you know, you've got a central point. once upon a time, intranets were called that one-stop shop. I don't really like to use it as a one-stop shop anymore, because I do think that you have other channels and platforms to use, but actually most of the time your intranet is your first place to go. So just creating efficiencies within that workplace. So over to you, Pete. I think you're gonna...
Sorry, I was just getting distracted by the chat saying hello to Josephine. For those of you that were listening so intently, while Gemma was giving that sort of background on what's the purpose of an intranet, I was just popping in the chat saying, hey, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. This is an opportunity to connect with some peers from around the world, so don't let it pass by without seeing who else is on the call. So if you share your info, others will share theirs, and then you never know, you might make a LinkedIn connection. Very often off the back of these masterclasses, we get people connecting through social networks and then connecting through phone calls, conversations, Teams meetings, and sharing knowledge outside of this. So we really want this to be an opportunity for you to all get to know each other as well. Sometimes, and I say this having worked managing intranets, designing, building, deploying, managing intranets over many years, sometimes it's a lonely gig, because it can seem like not everyone in the organization cares as much about the awesome work you're doing to manage the intranet. And so a great opportunity today just to introduce yourselves to each other and make some connections. Do please take this opportunity to connect with each other, and connect with us as well if you like. We're always happy, particularly Gemma and I are full on, like I'd say A+ star grade nerds for intranets. And this slide here is kind of one of the things that's always motivated me around managing intranets effectively, which is I've often sat in the digital workplace or internal comms or HR or culture teams in organizations looking after the digital employee experience. And I've always been frustrated that my colleagues in marketing that manage the website, or the digital team that manage the external website, seem to just be, you know, they're drinking coffee out of cups made from $100 bills, and there's money flying around everywhere for the external website. And yet you've got, as an intranet manager, you're trying to create this incredible tool that is kind of the central source of truth for the organization. Most people, when they say what should one of the core purposes of an intranet be, is the place for the source of truth. But it's a whole lot more than that, because in every organization there's elements of, well, multi-purpose digital experiences that you're creating. So an intranet will often be a news site plus some form of booking tool, some kind of policy library. It's a training center that houses lots of learning experiences, and it's usually some element of being a support service as well. So imagine if your organization's external digital team had to create one website that did all these things. We've got some examples here from the outside real world, where you don't have a news site that's also a booking tool and a policy library and a training center and a support service. You have in here this example, the CNN news site. In the external world, a lot of the time there's very clear singular purposes for intranets and for internet sites. For intranets, it can be much more challenging. So I just want to kind of champion that and say, hey, those of you that are managing intranets, which I kind of assume is all of you, or having some solid hand in managing an effective intranet, we respect the work you're doing. We understand it. We've felt your pain. And hopefully today we can give a little bit of advice and guidance on the fact that we understand you're dealing with this challenge, which is a real big challenge. Let me jump on. I'm going to share some of the insights from our 2024 benchmarking report and some of the talks from our SharePoint Festival. I might ask here actually, Nicole or Gemma, if you could share the link to the recordings from the SharePoint Festival in the chat. That would be great at some point, because for those of you that didn't attend, you can go to the SWOOP website, where we've got loads of talks, loads of short, sharp, real case study presentations from real organizations doing awesome things with SharePoint Online. Thanks, Nicole, dropping that in the chat there. If you haven't already watched some or all of these talks, then definitely go to that site, take a look around. There's global organizations presenting some really great examples and case studies. And I'm going to talk to a couple of those in particular over the next slide. But first, I'll start off with a couple of data points that I think really resonate from our benchmarking study. And this is one, again, it's sort of backing up the importance of the intranet still. There's a lot of talk about, what's the future hold, and everyone's got this obsession with AI to a certain degree. A lot of it's valid, but there's a lot that's like, well, is your intranet solid? And that foundational component of it. And this data point from our recent study, I think, is really important, that when we looked over a 3-month period across the organizations we benchmarked, we found that on average 86% of employees visit the intranet over that 3-month period. So it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the intranet is still accessed by a vast proportion of people in most organizations. What's interesting, though, is of those 87% of people, 60% of those are reading news pages. The other 40% are not reading the news. They're accessing all of the content that's beyond the news, So all 86% are visiting the intranet and looking at content on there, but only 60% of those are looking at news. So important to think of this as well when we're talking about managing a decentralized intranet. We're not just talking about news publishing. We're talking about the whole of the intranet. Another key point that really resonated with me and kind of surprised me in a couple of ways was, on average, employees are spending 16 minutes per day on the intranet. So that as a standalone piece of data, okay, interesting. I was surprised that it was that high, if I'm honest. We often see there's some kind of industry standards that get bandied about, and one of those key ones that I've heard over a few years now is, from an internal comms perspective, you have 15 minutes per day if you're lucky to catch people with messaging. But an interesting thing when you look at the intranet from our data, from our large data set in this benchmarking study, 16 minutes per day spent on the intranet. The other big surprise for me was that of that 16 minutes, only 1 minute is spent reading news. The other 15 minutes is doing what the intranet is often designed for, helping people get their work done. So there's a few different ways to look at this data point, but I think it's really quite an interesting thing just to mull over. And both of these data points, 86% of people accessing the intranet, 16 minutes per day. There's some significant time and effort going into the intranet. So it just backs up the thing of how important it is for organizations to genuinely put effort and investment into the intranet. And I don't just mean financial investment. I mean the time and the energy and the effort and the commitment. And when you're looking at a decentralized intranet content model, then that is talking about a lot of people across an organization putting time and energy and effort into creating, hopefully, a great digital employee experience.
Pete, sorry, we've just got a couple of questions in the chat about the data.
Oh, great. Cool. Yep. Okay. I can see Karen asking, curious to learn if that included non-desk-based employees. Yep. We factored in everybody in the organizations that we studied. It was everybody who has a Microsoft license in those organizations where people are out in the field, but they've got a license where they're getting email, then their data's included in that as well. So there's a range of organizations. Definitely have a look at the benchmarking report if you haven't downloaded it already. And again, I'll ask Nicole, perhaps you could drop the link to where people can download the benchmarking study, and it's got all the detail in there around exactly the makeup of the organizations and the people in our study. Any other? I'm seeing Maureen, does this data point break out if the intranet is automatically the first thing that opens when a user starts? Good question.
So I know the answer to this. So
you do?
So we took out that data. So we some customers or some benchmarking do have it to open on as soon as they open a browser. So then what we did is we looked at the time frame of them opening it up and then moving on. So we excluded that. And I think Pete said it will probably be in the intro. And then Jim's just said about people, is the data exclusive of those who open the page or a news story, that just leave it open. So we close our sessions after 30 minutes. So we do the closing sessions, because what we found, and actually from our analytics that we're looking at, SharePoint analytics, quite a few, SWOOP definitely, you can include us in that, have a lot of campers. So that means people are opening pages on the intranet and then they just leave them open when they go elsewhere. So we'll close that session after 30 minutes, but we do see it a lot. And I'm definitely guilty of just leaving intranet articles open or intranet pages open. So we do close it, but yeah, we do get a lot of campers. So we've excluded the browser window. It won't include those. And Nicole's just popped a link to the SharePoint Intranet Benchmarking Report. It's a brilliant read. Definitely recommend it.
Cool. All right, I'll jump back into this. Just to cover some of the key benefits of running a decentralized intranet that we see and that we hear from customers and friends of SWOOP. The empowerment of others is a really important benefit of putting the energy and effort into establishing a decentralized model. So really, I guess it's about empowering the local teams and subject matter experts to manage their own content. So one of the biggest problems if you're centralized is you have this bottleneck that gets created where people have to submit content through to a central team that may not know the subject, may not know sort of the need for speed around that particular piece of content, and these bottlenecks can impact on the flow of knowledge within organizations. Content management and quality. We can see in the data that decentralized intranets often have better content quality, so fewer errors, fewer broken links. It's often the case that the closer you can get to the source, closer you can get to the audience, generally it's received wisdom that the more care there is about the quality of the content, right? It makes sense. If someone's close to you, you're gonna care more about the experience that they have. In terms of user engagement, we also see clearly from the benchmarking data that decentralized intranets tend to have higher user engagement. So when employees feel ownership over their content, they're more likely to interact with it and keep it current. So that increased engagement leads to a more vibrant and useful intranet. And in the report, we highlight that organizations with decentralized intranets often see higher page views. Now, that as a standalone metric might be a good thing, might be a bad thing, but generally, as a general thing, seeing more people are engaging and looking at and engaging with the content when it's in a decentralized model. I think that's a good case to show you can make the relatively safe assumption that people are seeing more relevant content that's more pertinent to their immediate day-to-day activities, and so they're engaging with it more. One of the biggest benefits is the flexibility and responsiveness you get if you have a decentralized model. So you can give a department ownership of their site and let them do what they need to with it. They're going to be able to be much more responsive, much more rapid at sharing knowledge, give quicker updates. They'll tailor the content more effectively. It can be really crucial in fast-paced environments that we all work in right now. So the benchmarking data does show that decentralized intranets adapt more quickly to changes and new requirements as well. And the Syngenta and Danfoss examples that I'm going to speak to in just a moment really kind of give a bit more flavor to that. Actually, on that, anything else you want to add there, Gemma, from your experience, or happy with that? Oh, you're on mute. There we go. We've ticked the you're on mute button.
Just as on mute. The empowering others bit, but it is definitely empower them. They, like as you said, subject matter experts on it, but it is about you as an intranet manager setting up those colleagues for success. So that's something we'll be going to cover as we go on through the slides.
Cool. All right, so foundations of decentralized success. So from our research, from our case studies, presentations, conversations we're having all the time with people who are running intranets of various different shapes and sizes in various different organizations, we've wrapped it up into these 4 key themes that stand out as key to decentralized success. Having clearly defined purpose and roles, making it easy, but in inverted commas, safe, so people can feel confident and comfortable creating and sharing content, supporting your people with appropriate training. And you could be cynical and say, well, we would say this because we're SWOOP Analytics, but genuinely using analytics for efficient oversight and continuous improvement. I always, the bane of my life when I was managing an intranet, a large group intranet with a complex decentralized model a few years back, was trying to get good data that could actually help me inform, educate, manage, support my decentralized content owners. And now that I've seen the kind of stuff, now I'm inside SWOOP and I see what SWOOP's created with SWOOP for SharePoint, I go, oh man, this would have made my life so much easier. But it's also rammed home to me how very often as a practitioner, you know the kind of data that would be helpful to you, but you just can't access it. And so we'll show you later on some of the data that you can get from SWOOP, and hopefully it will sort of give you some light bulb moments to go, oh wow, okay, yeah. And you'll see that many of us in SWOOP are intranet managers, and have contributed as much as possible to creating a tool that can really help, particularly with this decentralized model. I'm going to just now highlight a couple of points from two presentations at the SharePoint Intranet Festival from Danfoss and from Syngenta. So two, well, Syngenta's based in Europe, but global. Danfoss out of Denmark, but global again. So large organizations with complex or potentially complex environments, but not necessarily complex intranets, because they've done an awful lot of work to simplify, clarify, and get clearly defined on the purpose of their intranets and the roles of people within their decentralized content models. Nicole or Gemma, if you could share the links directly to the two presentations that I'm going to share these snippets from, that would be great. Oh, perfect, fantastic. So this one here I want to highlight is the work that Danfoss did around clearly defining roles and the purpose. They use this, I think it's fantastic, this beekeeper analogy, or hive analogy, I guess. So the way that they structure and communicate to the people that play a role in their decentralized content model, they talk about having an area owner. So this is kind of the beekeeper, the person who's overseeing the hives. Then they have their site owner, or an owner substitute. When someone's nominated as a site owner or puts their hand up to be a site owner, they're required to have a substitute so that they've got that backup. That's kind of like the queen bee who's in the actual hive overseeing everything that's going on there. And then they've got the editors who are like the worker bees or the honeybees that are creating the gold that everybody's lapping up. So I just thought that was a beautiful analogy and shows when we talk about having clear roles, it doesn't need to be super granular. It just needs to be enough that the people who you're empowering as decentralized content owners can grasp it, and that they can understand where they sit in the bigger picture. I thought that was a beautiful way of describing it. But Jörn and Hannah, who from Danfoss, who presented at the festival, if you click on the link to the Danfoss session that Nicole's just shared, they explain it much more clearly and in much more detail. It's well worth having a watch of their presentation. And in terms of defining purpose and clearly outlining the roles, you'll see in the Danfoss presentation as well, they do some fantastic things around the having just enough governance that people are really clear on the purpose of their content. So they have this great tool called the clarification canvas. I would urge everyone on this call to take a look at their presentation and see how they describe the clarification canvas. In short, anyone who wants to create and own content on the intranet needs to go through this simple one-pager and really think about, okay, who's going to consume my content? What's it for? What's the purpose of this? So they're baking purpose right through their whole governance process, and it's really fantastic to see. And in terms of clarity of roles, they've got this great kind of mapping out of the process outline for area owners, site owners, editors. There's real clarity of purpose there. There's real clarity of task. So anyone who they engage across the organization to take ownership is going to be clear on what's being asked of them, what they're being asked to do, how they're going to best be able to contribute, and what the confines of their remit is as well, I think is an important piece. In terms of making it easy but safe, that second point, I really love the example that Syngenta gave, and Melinda from Syngenta gave a great talk. It's quite a different approach that they've taken. There's a lot that complements and aligns between the Syngenta example and the Danfoss example. There's a lot that kind of contrasts as well. And I think Syngenta, there's some great examples in there of making it easy, being a priority piece of their decentralized model. So they've got really simple roles. This is quite sort of focused on the news side of things, but applies across the whole intranet as well. And they've got this really simple step-by-step model of how things work. They're trying to make it easy to publish content. But the key piece for me in what Melinda presents in this case study is how they do have a really solid focus from a management perspective of communicating to their content owners, their content creators across the intranet, to make people feel comfortable doing it. So they're messaging really proactively to say, it's easy, it's straightforward, you can go ahead and do it. So they're shifting the culture from a centralized model where people were sort of embedded into asking permission to share something, into a truly decentralized model where people's default behavior is, I'll share it straight away. So they're getting, their focus is on making it easy to get faster speed to market, more localization, more engagement, more quickly. So that Syngenta case study is a great, there's some great examples in there about that. And I love the way that Melinda described why they take this approach. Less command and control, getting the news into the hands of the people who know best about it and helping them get it to their audiences as soon as possible, making it easy to do. And I love this line that Melinda speaks to around news is only new when it's happening now. And they can see that in the data. That it's all about speed to market for news, so decentralized to get that happening as quickly as possible. And you know, there's the point here around kind of life is complicated enough, why make it harder? So they've kept it as simple as possible, with minimal customizations and minimal kind of process barriers and gateways to getting your content out there. Because it means it's easier to manage that way in a big way. So there's less to go wrong if you don't have all these complex customizations. And they do some great work with Power Automate as well, which they describe as their head of editorial. So they've put in a lot of time and thinking up front and done the hard work centrally, so that their decentralized content contributors and owners don't have to do the hard work. So from an employee experience perspective, it's that classic mantra in customer experience of don't make your problem the customer's problem. And they've really applied it here nicely using Power Automate to build something that can handle translations, it can place content on a page, it expires content, it features content, and it essentially manages their 24-hour publishing cycle as a global organization. So if anybody is interested in how exactly this works, I'd just say search for Melinda Schaller at Syngenta on LinkedIn, reach out to her and say, hey, can we talk about your head of editorial being Power Automate? She's a real forward thinker, and please do feel free. I'm saying this without having asked Melinda's permission, but if she gets a flurry of connection requests, she's fantastic, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share the experiences that she's had at Syngenta. Supporting your people with appropriate training. There's some great stuff that Danfoss speak to around setting the foundation and getting the resource commitment. And they put a lot of work into understanding how much time and energy and effort they're requiring from people across the organization who want to and are able to contribute as content owners, content editors. And I liked this thing of where they call out getting resource commitment. So they did a relatively easy exercise of calculating how much time are people going to have to commit to the training. And they aligned that to the roles that people are going to play. So they can be really upfront with people who are being nominated or volunteering to sign up to contribute, to say this is how much effort you're going to have to put into this. And I just really like that, because it's something I never did when I was managing intranets, and I just thought, man, this would have been really, really helpful. So I like that a lot, and I wanted to share that today. And when you're thinking about appropriate training, this exercise of thinking about the resource commitment that you're asking of people is a really good kind of exercise to go through when you're thinking about, is this appropriate? Am I asking too much? Do I need to redesign the way I'm approaching this training and supporting in order that it's a lesser impact, or is there capacity for more time where people could become more expert in the tasks we need them to carry out? And here's just a simple screenshot from the site that Danfoss created to house their training materials. The key thing I want to call out on here is they've done a fantastic job of using multiple channels to deliver the content. So this is all living on a SharePoint site, but you can see they've got bits and pieces in different areas. They've got bits and pieces in different formats, so that people can actually dip in, dip out. They can access things when they need. It's all centrally managed, but multi-channel, multi-experiences. And they really do what we see time and again delivering great value, is they create and deliver their training with community in mind, to try and create that peer-to-peer collaboration and knowledge sharing as well, which is absolutely critical to a really sustainable and successful decentralized model. The multi-format content really helps. It can help people who have different preferences around how they want to consume the training. And they really think about asynchronicity and different time zones across the organization. So they're creating content people can access whenever they need it. There are components that they create as well that are compliance led. So if you want certain permissions to be able to do certain tasks, you need to complete a certain proportion of a training course, and you need to have done it within a time frame. So they're building out a really holistic experience in terms of supporting people. And often one of the big supporting actions that you can take when you're managing that decentralized model is asking for, or maybe actually even demanding, genuine commitment from your people who are putting their hands up or being told that they need to contribute. So having some of those compliance elements in there as well, that you must do this in order to be able to do this. It's kind of always makes me think of Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility, you know. Maybe that's just reflecting that I have a 4-year-old who's obsessed with Spidey. So everything comes back to that. Gemma, do you want to just talk about some of the topics that you could cover?
Yeah, of course. So back to Pete. So I have launched intranets for retailer in the UK, telecommunications in the UK. So I did actually adopt sort of the Danfoss way of training people. I would spend time, but it is about helping your content editors, because naturally they might not work in internal comms. They will work in different areas within the business. So you really do need to help them. Their ways of learning will be different. So here are just some topics for you to think about when training. So if you break them down into those different site owners, your different content owners, page owners, things like that. But definitely you think about the things like accessibility. So I know we probably don't go into that a lot, but it is so important. Things about alt text, PDFs, if you're reliant on things like PDFs, how accessible are they? Now, from our benchmarking, we do know that people are still mainly using the intranet on desktops. I think it's something like 98% people are still using intranets on desktops, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be setting up that mobile first experience. It's about optimizing that content. As Pete shared before, you know, people aren't spending a lot of time on your intranet, so it's about creating great content, writing for the web, keeping it concise, getting that most important information straight to the top. Ask the team to do regular audits. There's nothing worse when content is out of date, and we'll show you what you can do with some analytics there. I think you lose trust quite quickly when it comes to intranets and out of date content, so that's really important. And then just get engagement with your content. Honestly, intranets, like as Pete said, we are very geeky about intranets. We're very passionate about intranets, but I get it, like they go out of date very quickly, and sometimes these internet editors, it isn't their first job or their priority, but it is about getting that commitment to make sure that they love it as much as the internet manager does. So do you want to get to the next slide, Pete? So
yeah,
analytics. Pete's going to talk through some of our analytics here, but if I had SWOOP for SharePoint as an internet manager, I can tell you now my Friday afternoons would have been completely freed up, because every Friday I had diarised in my calendar to go through the internet to look at spelling mistakes, broken links, content out of date, if pages have page editors, even down to things like that. So just empower it, decentralize, when you have these decentralized owners, just to help them look at what's working, what isn't working, and just empower them to create great content. So over to you, Pete, with the amazing analytics.
Yeah, look, I always struggle a bit with this because I'm not a salesperson, and it always feels really salesy to be going, hey, look at our great tool. But I'm sharing this with like genuine, like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd had this. I'm the same as Gemma. When I was a SWOOP customer, I was using SWOOP for Yammer, as it was. It's obviously now SWOOP for Viva Engage. And but I was managing a SharePoint intranet, and I was just always wishing, oh my gosh, I wish I had SWOOP for SharePoint. And so when I joined SWOOP as an employee almost 3 years ago now, one of the first conversations I had once I'd come inside the company was about, oh, we're looking at a SharePoint intranet solution. And it's been a real privilege to kind of be on the inside watching as it's developed and grown. And we've now got a lot of customers around the world that are using this. And these health scores, I think, are one of the things that really light my fire, because what SWOOP can do is we've built a tool that does a lot of automated analysis of every page on your intranet, and it will tell you how's the engagement. So it will look at how long a page should take to read versus the actual visitor time in terms of engagement. It will give you a score related to that. From a quality point of view, it will automatically pick up spelling mistakes, broken links. It will flag to you any aging content that could perhaps benefit from a refresh, at least in the eyes of the end user, because we know that the age of the content is a really significant factor in how much people trust that content. It will flag to you, one of the things that was a pain point for me on a regular basis was the amount of pages that were missing editors, where someone had left the business or moved to a new area and stopped owning their piece of content. So it will flag that to you. And from an experience perspective, it will give a readability score for the content on the page. It will analyze even the complexity of the headings you're using, and are you using an appropriate amount of headings to break up the content so it's easy to read. But ultimately what this does, I think that's most important with health scoring, is it flips the traditional intranet model. So what I often experienced across a number of organizations, and I know chatting with a lot of practitioners, it seems to be a kind of standard, is you would launch your shiny new intranet and have it absolutely perfect on day one. And as soon as it came to life, it started getting worse, because other people would create content that didn't meet certain standards. You would have broken links, you would have spelling mistakes, you'd have content getting older and less trusted, etc., etc. And the classic model is you launch your new intranet, day one, it's amazing. Gradually over a 2 or 3 year period, the quality, the experience gets worse and worse, to the extent where usually about 2 or 3 years in, the business goes, we need a new intranet, or we need an intranet revamp. And you have this long intranet improvement cycle. Now in the era of employee experience and much more robust demands from employees, we wanted to create a tool that gives you much more of a continuous improvement kind of product management concept. And having these health scores, not only does it give you some of the problems that you can easily fix to improve the experience that your intranet provides, but it also gives you a shared language. So if you've got a decentralized content model, if you've got decentralized owners across your intranet around the world, instead of just going to someone and saying, hey, I've looked at your content and I think you could improve it in this way, you've got this shared language of the health scoring. And this health scoring can be done, it's done on every page. Those page scores roll up to a site level. So if you're talking with a site owner, if you've got your queen bee that you're having a conversation with, you can help them analyze everything that's happening across the pages on their site. If you're looking at the whole intranet level, you can get a health score for that, and you can use it to say, hey, today I want to take a look at all of the broken links. And there's so much opportunity that this health scoring mechanism provides. So I just wanted to share some of my love for this component of the product. And it's all about this continuous improvement piece, because what does the health scoring actually lead to? It leads us to be able to deliver to you reports like this. So one of the big things we hear from intranet managers, intranet owners, is I have a limited amount of time every day, week, month, quarter to make some changes. You want to make sure that the changes you're making are giving you the biggest bang for buck. So when we've got this health scoring, you could be sat there looking at the whole of intranet level, and in a few clicks, you could see, if I've only got a limited time frame to fix something, if I fix that priority piece that SWOOP's telling me, this is a combo of the health score, the amount of issues on the page, and the amount of usage or the engagement with that page, I want to focus my energy on fixing that problem, because that's gonna be the best use of the 20 minutes I have today. You can create these fix lists that will direct you straight away to the issues that you've got, and imagine you have a site owner based over in Venezuela, and they're able to access SWOOP and just off their own bat be able to go across my site, where are the issues, what can I fix today? And they can look at that fix list and go, I'm going to focus on spelling mistakes or broken links. I can easily see the missing editors. So that analytics that gives you that visibility and that decentralized visibility to support your decentralized content model is really critical to that continuous improvement piece. Gemma, do you want to speak to this? I've heard enough of my voice. I'm sure everyone else has.
Okay, so then we can help you look at your activity insights. So when's the best time to post? So you can see we look at the heat map, so like a little hotspot there, so the darker the time. And again, having this data at your fingertips really helps you manage those stakeholders that say, I'm going to post at 4 o'clock on a Friday. Well, you can demonstrate actually 4 o'clock on Friday isn't the best time to post. So they're having that data at your fingertips to really understand your internal audience, to make your intranet work well, not only for the internal comms or you as an intranet manager, but actually as those different functions within the business. We went back, I spoke about a bit earlier about the personas, so the campers. We talk about how people are consuming content on your intranet. Most actually people are speed readers, which goes back to that whole quality piece. Are you creating content that's set up for speed readers? So it's about that chunking information. Make sure there's enough headings to people know what they're going to get from that content. And again, getting that most important content right at the top. So we let you know how people are using your intranet to then guide you in your training, to help you set up your intranet editors to create wonderful content for everybody else. We can also look at your top editors. So there's not only looking at your intranet pages, but you're looking at the files they're updated as well, if you do rely on files within your intranet. So again, it's just having this wealth of information to really set everybody up to be creating great content on the intranet. We can also tell you your popular content. So we also understand if it's a SharePoint page, a news article, or a file. And we also tell you if there's been 0 hits. So again, having those conversations when somebody's coming to you to say, my information is the most important information in the world, and it has to sit on the homepage, or it has to have a button on the homepage, or it needs to be on the intranet. You can actually demonstrate that nobody's looked at that piece of content for the last 6 months, so actually you're going to archive it or delete it, or just help people to really understand, because as Pete said, they come out of date very quickly and they become a bit of an archive. And then this is my favourite. So personally, out of all of it, this is one of my favourite areas within SWOOP for SharePoint. What are people searching for? So this just shows you if in the red colour, if they've got a high exit rate, so it means they're doing the searching, they maybe can't find it, and then they're coming out of your intranet. So this again will just really help you understand what content you could be weaving into some of your comms to make sure, create that stickiness, make sure that people are coming into your intranet and finding the content they need. Pete's going to cover Dr. Swoop.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So this is something relatively new for us. It's what the last sort of 6 months we've been really sort of rolling out Dr. Swoop, which is integrated into SWOOP for SharePoint. It's integrated into all of SWOOP's products. And there's just 3 simple examples working through there. I'm not expecting you to read all of the copy in there, but it's just to show you we've got this. We're really starting to understand the value of some AI guidance, particularly relevant for this decentralized model of intranet management. So you imagine that you roll out SWOOP to your content editors, content owners, your site owners across the organization, and you say, there you go, you can use SWOOP to see your data. Now they might be sat there going, how do I do this? We can obviously give them some training support, but on the day-to-day basis, they've got Dr. Swoop alongside them, where they can simply go into the chatbot and say something like, here we go on this example, how can I improve engagement with my intranet news story? And then Dr. Swoop will reference all of SWOOP's research and case studies and data around this and give a really qualified, sensible, hopefully very helpful answer to the question that someone is asking. So you can imagine that really engaged person who maybe hasn't worked on intranets before, but they really want to do an amazing job of communicating within their departmental site. They've got a sidekick here, someone they can go to and chat to, and that's this lovely, friendly owl that is Dr. Swoop, where they can ask a question and reference really properly researched sources of information. It will point them in the direction of any case studies that might be relevant, any examples that could be relevant, and any blog posts and research that we've done. So we're getting really, really positive feedback from customers on this in terms of supporting that decentralized model, which is why I just wanted to highlight this here. And I think it's, for me, I'm one of these, I don't know if it's an age thing or something. I've surprised myself by how I'm a little bit standoffish about AI. I've always seen myself as the innovator who's running at the forefront of things, and I'm feeling like, oh, maybe that's not me now because AI is scaring me a little bit. But I do think this is a really nice example of how you can have a chatbot that's a simple user interface for people who managing an intranet or managing a site, managing content is not their day job necessarily. And they've got something right there in SWOOP that they can turn to and get advice. So yeah, if anyone's interested in learning more about SWOOP for SharePoint and Dr. Swoop, do give us a shout. Reach out to myself, Gemma, Coco, or Nicole, whoever you think has the friendliest face. Cue no one reaching out to me, but do give us a shout, and we're just nerds for this stuff, so happy to demo, happy to show you, happy to talk about how it could help you in your organization. That really brings us towards the end. Just to wrap things up, want to just highlight the fact that it's really, 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 I hope you felt it today, really genuine in all of us at SWOOP that we want to contribute to practitioners and contribute to the community. So we have reports, case studies, blog posts, videos. We run events online very, very often. Keep across the SWOOP Academy, where we're running these sorts of webinars relatively consistently throughout the year, trying to add value, because so many of us in SWOOP are practitioners. And we kind of have the approach of let's create some experiences that we wish we could have accessed. SWOOP is really well known for its benchmarking reports, and I'd urge you to download the SharePoint benchmarking report. If Viva Engage is on your radar too, we have our Viva Engage benchmarking report, which we're very well known for. But we've got a ton of resources on the SWOOP Analytics website, on our blog, and on our YouTube channel. So do access them, download our reports, get in touch with us. We are nerds, happy to chat to other nerds, other people who aren't nerds but just interested in intranets. Whatever your story is, reach out and get in touch with us. Here is
a few questions in the Q&A as well, Pete. I don't know if we want to.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Well.
Let's see. Oh, Q&A. Yeah. Okay, I'll start with Jim. Question to consider. Does SWOOP participants on this call have an opinion with respect to a federated common intranet homepage for a decentralized global intranet? Good question.
Jim, are you saying that everyone sees exactly the same thing when they open their intranet for your...
At least in part, yes.
Yeah. So one of our customers, they split it up. So the top half, so they do have a bit of a scroll, but top half, everybody sees it. And then they've done personalization. So then the next block down, they've actually personalized it. So depending on where you are within the business, depending on like where you sit within Active Directory and things like that, they then give them that personalized feed. So if you're within a function, HR, for example, they'll see HR content relevant. So top half, everybody sees exactly the same, and then more of that personalized piece. And if you, Jim, if you want to, we can talk about it afterwards. If you want me to put you in touch with them, more than happy to.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear anyone else on the call's opinion. So we're not listening to me or Gemma. Does anyone have a thought you'd like to share on this, or are you all feeling a bit like shy? I'll give it just a few seconds to see if someone wants to jump off mute.
I'll give some background. We're in a big well, it's UNICEF. We're in 190 countries. There's a lot of independence of operations. Every country has its own intranet, every region, and we would like to federate some of the content so everyone's at least seeing some of the key global content, since we sit here in headquarters managing global content for staff.
Interesting. So I do have a comment I want to share, but does anybody else want to come off mute and share a thought on how you might tackle that, or any experience you have on this topic? Okay, I'm going to jump in. I think, Jim, the only thing I would say on that is the caveat of don't let the global perspective outshine the local perspective. I think that's a really important piece, and I have seen that in a couple of organizations. I've actually worked on an intranet myself where that happened, where we wanted to have this sort of blend of global and local, and what often then, or on a few occasions I've seen where the global, there becomes a bit of a power play around real estate essentially, and so it's good to have some really solid governance and constraints in place around that to say, global can't always come and trump local, and it can be as simple as how you design your layouts and where things sit, but it can come down to a granular level around, well, we've got this important local news story, but the global news story gets prominence, whereas actually for the audience it should be the local first. So there's a lot to consider in that, and I think it just adds more to the thing of governance, and clarity is really important when you're balancing those two kind of global and local perspectives.
Just to add, thank you. That's really valuable, because there are different opinions within even our team about this, but it just prompted me to think, I think there's a possibility that you could have two tabs open automatically. So you get one global and the local maybe primary, so that people see, oh, there are two tabs, and you can. Anyway.
Jim, I love your thinking. There's a world of possibility.
Yeah. Thanks.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Joy, in your experience, what is the minimum amount of time per week an editor should spend for a healthy site? Gemma, any thoughts on that?
So I used to say to intranet editors, keep it simple, because then you don't have to spend a lot of time on the internet, because most of the internet editors do have day jobs, so that it is a side of the desk activity. So just really, when setting up your intranet editors, get them to think, why would somebody come to their intranet site? What are colleagues after when they're visiting the IT paid facilities, HR, and just get them to put that information on. Avoid the meet the teams, avoid, Gemma likes to go to the, avoid all that. Give people what they need, because they, as you saw from our benchmarking results, people aren't spending a lot of time on that intranet, so they know what they want to go after. Help them find that content that they need, and then they will be leaving that intranet again. So for me, that is what I would say. So less is more, keep it simple, and then they don't need to spend, if they're spending hours and hours going through content, there's probably too much content on there. They don't know what they're targeting or what they're writing or what their audience needs. So just do a bit of work at that beginning to just anticipate why people are going to be visiting their pages.
And the bit I would add to that, Joy, in response to your question, is this is where good analytics is really important. So instead of someone just feeling like they need to do more, you can, with good effective analytics that's really insightful, you can help them be laser focused on what's going to actually make a difference. So they wouldn't need to spend time scouring their pages to find spelling mistakes or broken links. If you had SWOOP, they could just go, bang, here's the spelling mistake, click, click. And a task that might take them 15 minutes in the non-supported by analytics route to, it might be like 30 seconds or a minute. So, and these are the kind of things where you can look at this decentralized model and go, this is why I genuinely say I would have walked over hot coals to have a tool like SWOOP when I was running a decentralized intranet across quite a complex organization, because I just think of the amount of time that could be saved by all these content contributors, where they could pinpoint, bang, here's the thing I'm going to focus on today, here's the thing I'm going to focus on today, and make it much more sort of baked into the day. So maybe currently you've got someone who's spending 2 hours a week maintaining some overly complex, overly wordy, over delivered content. You could get the health score to help them see things in a different light, to refine, narrow down, and get really focused on what's actually delivering value. On a most simple level, you could actually show them, hey, nobody's visiting 70% of the content you've created, so let's not spend any time on that. So a lot of good analytics can contribute to alleviating the load from the shoulders of your content owners, editors, site owners, and editors. We are bang on time now, or at time. I do want to say thank you so much to everybody who's contributed. If you haven't already, make sure you download the SharePoint benchmarking report. But most of all, I'll just say thank you. Gemma, any parting words from you?
No, I think you've covered it all. But get in touch. We're on LinkedIn and we are here to talk about SWOOP. But as Pete said, we just want to help people as well. We've been there. So if you ever need help, or we can put you in touch with others, you can talk to us. We're more than open. So reach out, get in touch. And thank you for joining us today.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.